A very good afternoon. Welcome to the market segment. Asian markets cheered on the announcement made by Donald Trump that there would be a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. This followed Iran's symbolic retaliation against the US's attack of its nuclear facilities over the weekend. Iran warned the US and Qatar that it would be launching a missile assault against US bases in Qatar and then executed accordingly without inflicting any casualties. As a result of the perceived ceasefire, the oil price plummeted, with Brent crude oil now hovering below $70 a barrel. The Nikkei share average rose by 1.14%. The Hang Seng Index advanced by 2.09%, while the Shanghai Composite Index was also up by 1.15%. US markets ended yesterday's session in positive territory despite Iran's missile launch against US bases in Qatar. On the tech stock front, Tesla was a big gainer on the day, registering an 8% rise following the launch of its driverless taxi fleet. Market players are expected to shift their attention to Fed Chair Jerome Powell's statements to Congress around his monetary policy approach. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose by 0.9%. The S&P 500 advanced by 0.96%, while the Nasdaq Composite Index also gained, up 0.94%. Well, in the latest development on the Israel-Iran ceasefire, US President Donald Trump has issued a warning through his social media platform. He says that Israel should not drop any more bombs on Iran, or it would be a violation of the ceasefire he's trying to broker between the two countries. This comes as Trump said that both Israel and Iran violated the ceasefire announced hours earlier, and he was not happy with either country, but especially Israel. All right, let's look at what's happening locally on the all-share index. We see that is currently up 0.6% at 95,735 index points. On the currency front, the rand is trading at 17.72 against the US dollar, up very nicely against that currency, 20.55 vis-a-vis the euro and 24.11 against the British pound. On the commodity front, we see that gold is trading at $3,323 an ounce, platinum at $1,304 an ounce, while Brent crude oil is trading at $69.35 a barrel. All right, let's get into it with Makwe Masilela. He's Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Thank you so much, Makwe. So the oil price has fallen quite substantially, and I suppose barring heightened tensions in the Middle East, the fundamentals really remain supportive of a weaker oil price.
Definitely, they continue to be in place, and because now we've seen that this geopolitical premium is deflating, and all because of this fragile truce that we are seeing between Israel and Iran. You know, to think that this whole 12-day war triggered most of this high volatility when it comes to oil prices. I mean, just yesterday, Brent crude was almost within $10 range, which is huge because this is the wildest since July 2022. So I think for now, because they've not been any disruptions when it comes to oil supply, so markets are currently cheering all that, and basically most asset prices are going back to where they were before they all started between the two countries.
Does it give you a lot of hope that things actually that ceasefire may be prolonged, given that Donald Trump seems to not only be putting pressure on Iran but also Israel as well?
For now, yes, we think that it might work out, but the big elephant in the room still remains. Remember, we've got almost 2 weeks to go, when it comes to the deadline of tariffs. So that's another thing. But yes, as it stands now, we think the guys cannot afford to continue the way they've been continuing. And we've seen the likes of Israel have been getting most of the help coming from the US. So I think in a way, they're bound to listen to the US indirectly also.
All right. So let's talk about nuts and bolts that relate to the global economy, more specifically the US economy, which affects all of us. US Fed Chair Jerome Powell is going to be giving testimony to Congress. And of course, with everything that's been going on, it must be quite a difficult weighing game for him. What do you expect him to say or focus on in terms of interest rates? And do you see the Fed being able to cut rates further this year?
I think they should be able to cut the rates. And yes, everything going on, including the insult coming from Donald Trump himself to the chairperson as well. But the guy and other policymakers have been clear when it comes to their message that they are very concerned, because of this uncertainty that might be caused by Donald Trump's policies. And I think they will continue on that. But we've seen now lately, yesterday and the day before, two of the officials have stated that they are prepared to start cutting interest rates come July. But two out of all that number is not sufficient. I think the guys, they will continue to play wait and see, even though some of the two guys are expecting a cut as early as July. But yes, will we get another cut this year from the US? Most probably, given what is happening with the inflation and also with their labor market, because they've got that dual mandate.
So, of course, it's no surprise that markets today are doing rather well. Thank you very much. Positive on global markets, positive on the local market, up 0.6% at the moment, with the exception of resources. But I see that that could be related, of course, to the oil price. How are you seeing things today, and especially the rand having firmed very nicely against the US dollar?
Because remember, with this war, when it started, people started going to the US dollar, or they preferred the US dollar more of a safe haven versus gold itself, So now with this ceasefire, whether we call it a pause, whatever we want to call it, then it makes sense to see the likes of the rand regaining some of the strength. And resources, we know they've been doing great. Just for the past 3 months, they've been up just over 16% or so. Just yesterday, our resources were up almost 2.4%. So probably profit taking is also kicking in.
So tell me, what do you think about these various pieces of information coming out about National Treasury borrowing 27 billion rand from the World Bank for infrastructure development? It's also courting or flirting with the French Development Bank, also around the same issue, looking to borrow $300 million somewhere there, as well as the BRICS Bank. I suppose this is their way of avoiding having to go to the commercial market to borrow money on the bond markets,
which are very expensive, but still is very important. If that money is going to have a multiply effect, then that's very good, And it's not a question of creating jobs during the construction of those infrastructure projects, but more importantly, the contribution that will happen to our economic growth going forward. As we have seen that those, especially our energy and logistics, have been a drag when it comes to our economic growth. So if that will help our economy to grow, that will even make it much easier for us to be able to repay that money.
Indeed. Makwe, thank you so much for your time. As always, that was Makwe Masilela. He's Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers.